Evening, folks, and I will call the regular board meeting of October 22, 2025 to order. And on behalf of us all, acknowledge that this evening we're meeting on the traditional lands and territories of the Saanich people who have lived, learned, worked, and stewarded these lands for thousands of years. And so despite the challenges we sometimes see to efforts at reconciliation, this is our gesture of continued efforts by this board and this district to achieve that with respect and with trust. I wish to welcome the management team to the meeting of the board this evening. Superintendent Dave Eberwin, Secretary Treasurer Jason Reed, Assistant Superintendent Peter Westhaver, Assistant Superintendent Melanie Taz, and Director of Construction Lena Taggart. And we have joining us virtually online representatives of our education partner groups from COPACS, the Confederation of Parent Advisory Councils of Saanich, Co-President Phil Malloy. Welcome, Phil. Can you hear us?
Yep, I am just trying to figure out my volume, but I can hear you. Yep. Can you hear me?
We can hear you well.
Ooh.
Thank you. That wasn't an invitation.
Should I sing?
Thank you for joining us. And we also have attending on behalf of the Saanich Administrators Association, Principal Anita Coe. Welcome, Anita. And from the Saanich Teachers Association, President Shannon Turonitz. And from QP441, the new president, Marisol Verdad. Welcome to all of you. And there will be an opportunity twice in the meeting, guests to ask any relevant questions if you should choose to do so. Trustees, let's proceed with the adoption of the agenda. If we may, before then, I should note that we have regrets from two of our trustees. Trustee Silser and Trustee Hickman are unable to be with us tonight. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda? Trustee Van Well, second by Trustee McMurphy. Are there any additions, changes, amendments? All in favor of adopting the agenda as circulated? Opposed? Carried. We have an agenda. And then I will advise that prior to this regular meeting, the board held an in-camera meeting and discussed personnel matters and business affairs. And in addition, the board in that meeting passed a motion that we rise and report the audit findings from the audit findings report from the Office of the Auditor General. And that report will be made available publicly on the district website in due course. Moving then to the minutes and the adoption of the board meeting minutes of September 17, 2025. With the change noting regrets by Trustee Elder at that meeting, are there any errors or omissions to those minutes? Seeing none, I declare that those minutes be adopted as circulated with the change noting Trustee Elder's regrets for his absence. There is no business arising from the minutes. There are no presentations or delegations, but this is the first opportunity, as I indicated, for guests, public, or partner representatives to ask any questions. If there are any, please raise a hand or shout or signify by something you would like to address the meeting. Mr. Malloy.
Hi, in reviewing the meeting package, I was looking at one of the policies, in particular, the election of trustees, and I noticed the understandable concern relating to election of candidates who may have a conflict of interest arising from a special interest in a school. I wondered if that in practice would restrict parents of the school district from standing for as a candidate, because they would have a perceived conflict of interest with the school of their students.
And you're referring, Phil, to the election of October 2026?
I'm not referring to any particular election in particular, just generally a parent of a student in SD 63 wishing to stand for election to the Board of Trustees.
Right, in policy 12, thank you. I'll ask the Secretary Treasurer to address that if you would, Mr. Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Phil, I assume that you're referring to the amendments to policy 12, and the policy 12 does not prohibit anybody from running for trustee. What policy 12 really is saying is that there's trustees shouldn't be doing their campaigning in schools, and a trustee should not be using their or any person should not be using their connection to a school to further their campaign. And so the intention of that policy kind of on a whole is to ensure that the campaigning isn't occurring in schools, and also ensuring that there's a level playing field for all candidates. And if somebody has a close connection to the district, they're not using that in a way that gives them an advantage. So that's kind of a high level overview of the intention of policy 12.
Does that help, Phil?
Yes, that reassures me that there's nothing limiting parents from standing for election.
No, there is not. Just
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes? Fine, thank you. Then we'll proceed with item 6, which is the report from the chair. Very briefly, on October 6th, I participated in a chair's call with Minister of Education and Childcare there, sponsored by BC School Trustees Association. This was one day in advance of her tabling amendments to the School Act in the legislature. And so we were bound by confidentiality for that one day. And the issue, of course, is childcare on district sites. And so the following day, the minister tabled those amendments in the House. And there have been, as I understand it, several pilots in the province preceding that step. As a district, we await further study and guidance on this, but generally it's intended to remove barriers to facilitate better and more effective child care in school districts. And there are a number of points, as I understand it, subject to a clearer guidance from the ministry in due course. First, it will apply to all ages who need care, including toddlers and infants. Second, that school districts may provide that care directly and not necessarily through third parties, as is the exclusive case with our district at this point. It will apply on non-school days or non-instructional days as well. And there's an effort at financial sustainability with a mechanism for cost recovery so that the cost will not be taken from the operations budget. The minister advised that the ministry is working with First Nations as well on this, and it's an encouraging step, and we look forward to further detail, and particularly as it applies to our district. Trustees, second, will remember that December 4 is our annual planning day, and you will recall that at our September meeting, we determined that the topic for that will be an in-depth review of the draft long-range facilities plan. Pertinent to that, I expect that we'll spend some time examining at least half of the properties, perhaps all of the properties in the district, but certainly those that have some question about future use. And so that'll be led by Secretary Treasurer Reid, and Director Lum will also be present to assist. Factors for review will include as well zoning, enrollment rates, densification, highest and best use of the recommendations in the draft report. So if you haven't, trustees, please note that in your calendar and have a look at the report before then. Third, And while we've welcomed Marisol Burdett as the new QP441 president, I wanted to make special mention in the chair's report that I understand that the executive election for QP was held last Saturday, and obviously Marisol is elected the president in place of succeeding Candace Whitney. Marisol is an administrative assistant in the transportation department. I wish to express our thanks to Candace Whitney for her service in her time, in her role in supporting collaboratively and cooperatively the work of the board. And welcome to you, Marisol. And we look forward to working with you in a similar fashion as an education partner in the district. Thank you again for attending the meeting tonight.
Thank you for having me, and I will pass along the message to Candace.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
And then fourth, trustees and guests and staff. The Vista and the Vancouver Island School Trustees Fall Conference was held in Campbell River October 3 and 4 with the theme Student-Centered Learning, Multiple Pathways to Success, which is a mouthful. The majority of the board was able to attend along with Secretary Treasurer Reid and Trustee Van Well. You'll be delivering the report in detail later in the meeting. Trustee Hickman is our Vista representative, but she couldn't be here tonight. And Trustee Van Well is the vice president of Vista. So we will look to that later on under reports from trustee representatives. I did, trustees, want to speak to the letter from COPAX of May 5, 2025. And you may recall that this came before the board that month. And if it's in the board package, so if you have it and if it's convenient, I welcome you to refer to it as I make my comments about it. In May, the board directed the chair, the vice chair, and the superintendent and secretary treasurer to meet or to seek a meeting with the executive of COPAX to discuss the correspondence. And I'm pleased to advise that we did so, and we met on October 2nd with co-presidents Philip Malloy, who is able to be with us this evening, and Tara Keeping. And we spent some time discussing the letter and reaching under an understanding, I believe. It was informative and collaborative, and we all worked together with respect to the 7 points of the letter. So just referring to those summarily, the first item was a request for increased access to district and board website data. And the understanding is that IT, information technology, will investigate potential further search capabilities to facilitate that request. So that's one that doesn't have the tick mark by it yet. Second was a request for an evening committee meeting. The discussion focused on the fact that what we might gain on one hand, we would probably lose on the other, given that our committee meetings require the attendance of staff and other partner representatives. And so it was left that the committee arrangements will stay as they are, meeting on committee day once a month. Third was the request with respect to publication of the Board of Education agenda and meeting package in a timely way. And it was clarified through the discussion that trustees and partners receive these at the same time and receive access at the same time. And so that information was helpful as well. Fourth is one where we can help further, and that was the request to share and track potential draft policy changes being considered by the policy committee and or the board. And as I understand it, they have the ability and the capacity to do so. And so it's proposed that those changes and the progress of that discussion is clear. That will be the practice unless there's objection to that, because we can do that. And that will benefit trustees and staff as well. We can track those proposed amendments. Fifth was the request to record the Ed Directions meetings, and turns out we're able to do that too. So similarly, unless there's an objection to that, we'll have a go at that as well. 6 was a request for a stipend for COPAC's committee representatives at our committee and board meetings with respect to transportation or childcare expense. And the discussion focused on that point, on the fact that the board makes a grant annually to COPACs. Currently it's $3,500. And it was left that COPACs will consider this in-house itself, possibly by allocating from the grant. But that is a decision, of course, for COPACs itself to consider. And then last and 7th was a request for childcare at district events. This would probably mean the annual parent engagement evening. Really, the district has never in practice organized that. Issues that might arise include licensing, insurance, and exposure to certain liability. But we agreed that the superintendent will check into these. If it happened, it would probably have to occur through an existing care provider. And so my guess is it's unlikely that we'll get there, but I don't want to foreclose the prospect without further investigation by the superintendent. So at this stage, numbers 4 and 5, we're prepared to go with, unless, as I say, there's vehement objection from the board. And I wish to acknowledge and thank Tara and Phil, and you're here, Phil, so I'll thank you again directly for the meeting, for the information and cooperative spirit in which that discussion occurred. And I would note further to that as well that this was a specific opportunity for the board to support our parent education partner and an opportunity to reiterate the importance of having our partners at our processes, our proceedings, and specifically our committee and our board meetings. And so I trust that this discussion is encouraging to our partner representatives who are listening, encouraging to you, Mr. Malloy, and your team at COPACs, and to us as trustees, because we remain committed to and concerned with engaging our partners in the work and the mandate of the board. And then finally, trustees, a brief reminder, perhaps unnecessary, that November 11 is Remembrance Day, when we remember and commemorate the end of World War I and the sacrifices for freedom and democracy that we value, teach, and enjoy. And with increased attacks, particularly in the West, on these and some development and evolving authoritarianism, it's all the more important to demonstrate our vigilance and support for our country, our democracy, and our education about our country and our democracy, including its history. Now, many, if not all, our schools will be hosting Remembrance Day ceremonies on Monday, the 10th, and inviting zonal trustees to attend. I know that some of those invitations have already been received. And so it's not possible, obviously, for all trustees to attend all schools in the zone for these. I know that Trustee Hickman and I try to circulate in an equitable fashion among the schools from year to year. But it is an opportunity, and one of the few opportunities that we have to go directly into the schools and engage with them and with the students and with the staff and appreciate and reflect on these matters by participating in and attending ceremonies. And so I encourage us all, to the extent that we may be able to do that, to participate in these and to accept those invitations. So thank you. That is the chair's report, unless there are any questions arising from that. I'll turn to the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This evening, I would also like to focus on 3 events that have happened this fall in our school district and the importance that our district places in each of these. Get forward. This evening, I'd like to talk about the Indigenous Focused Non-Instructional Day that happened on September the 22nd, along with our school's recognition of Truth and Reconciliation, and the annual Terry Fox Run. All three events are something that are equally supported by our schools and something that is important to recognize. On September the 22nd, our district gathered at Claremont Secondary to focus on decolonizing education, an important topic that follows the theme as prescribed by the Ministry of Education to have an Indigenous focused non-instructional day. And this is Saanich's version of that day. There was a tremendous amount of work that the Indigenous Education Department put into the day. And here's a sampling of some work that one of our teachers, Ms. Lobb from Stellies, as she was at the day, she sketched and painted out her reflections of the importance of the day to her. And you can see she is a French immersion teacher, and she has indicated in this particular painting the number of staff being present, the importance of culture with the drumming by our local employee Lance, and Dr. Brad Baker, who gave the keynote address. She also reflected around the importance of the day in terms of listening and in terms of the narrative of the people, the place in the story, and how we are grounding our conversation in identity, language, and community. We spent time talking about all the good work we are doing and all the good work that still needs to happen. I thought this was very moving that she would take this opportunity to have this own personal reflection of her experience during the day. We started off today with Dr. Brad Baker, a gentleman I've known for many years. He is from the Squamish Nation in North Vancouver. His keynote was on decolonization in the classroom and how do we move forward. One of the things that I particularly appreciated about Brad's address was his own personal journey. And he talked about his life and where his family was. And he spent a considerable time talking about the personalization about what decolonization meant for him as an educator, as someone from the Squamish Nation in North Vancouver, and as a provincial leader in Indigenous education. That day also had a tremendous number of workshops available. This is the spread of opportunities that staff, teachers, administrators, and some of our support staff had the opportunity to participate in. I won't read it through in its entirety, but you can see the diversity of opportunities of learning, both local First Nations culture as well as other Indigenous cultures locally and from around the province. Truly an outstanding series of workshops that our Indigenous Education Department has facilitated and put forward, and something that this board can be very proud of in terms of the work that goes on not only on this day, but throughout the year in terms of the leadership that our district is showing from the people in that department and throughout our school system to support truth and reconciliation and to really help move us forward in the district. Here are some sample photos from the day. This is the gathering in the Claremont Gym. There was a bookseller's table out front in the foyer. This is a Native Authors seminar that was happening in the theater. This is a dance group from Cowichan Valley that came for the second year in a row. They concluded the day for us. You can see our administrators and teachers were having a wonderful time in a shared dancing experience at the end of the day. I think I see somebody's daughter there, I'm not sure. That sort of looks like Maddie, but I'm not sure if it is or not in the corner there.
No, close.
It's not Maddie. Not as close, maybe not that close. On September 30th, Canada acknowledges the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It is a holiday that is recognized here in the province of BC. And as a school system, it's important for us to take time, and we recognize it the day before on September 29th. This is a day for not only recognizing local Indigenous culture, but the importance of the history that many within the community have suffered through legislation and through acts of colonialization. It's a time for us to continue to be cognizant and to be reflective on how we can be better. Here's a picture of Brentwood at the local park, enjoying some outdoor time along with Indigenous culture. There were many activities that were taking place throughout our schools, acknowledging the significance of this day and the importance it is to our entire community. These are just some photos that our schools forwarded on to me to show how important this day is to our community. The third day that I want to acknowledge and to recognize is the Terry Fox Run. We all know who Terry Fox is. We might not know some of the details or have forgotten some of them. In 1980, Terry began and finished only partway through his Marathon of Hope, ending just quite close to Thunder Bay, Ontario, from the East Coast on his trek across our nation. Every year since then, there has been an annual run in September that is organized in the community, but our schools also participate. That's recognized in over 650 communities across Canada, as well as every school in the Saanich School District. Here are some photos of our schools participating. It didn't hurt that it was an absolutely beautiful day for our schools to participate in this run. Again, an acknowledgement of community, the importance of being together as a team, and for fighting for a good cause. All in all, a great day. So that's my report for this evening, Mr. Chair. Just an opportunity for me to highlight some of the wonderful work that's going in our schools to celebrate important events in our community.
Thank you, Superintendent. Are there any questions or comments arising from the Superintendent's report? Thank you. School successes trustees are in the board package. And so I'm sure you've had a look at them already, and if not, or if you want to look again, here they are. Remember, we didn't have them in September because we just started school, but we've been in for now almost 2 months, and so there they are. We sometimes they don't get the attention that they deserve, I think, but I know that all of us read them as part of the package. Thank you. Item 9 is the report on the Indigenous Education Council, and I'll turn to Superintendent Everland for that.
Thank you very much. Just a short report on this. As people have noticed, this is a new agenda item that has now populated the board's public meeting agenda. That's a requirement not only within provincial legislation, but an important part for us to recognize this new structure. There is a briefing note in your package that outlines the function of the Indigenous Education Council, and I'm pleased to report this evening that through extensive collaboration and conversation with the local First Nations community, we have a terms of reference to begin the process of meeting as an Indigenous Education Council. There will be 8 elected members from the local nation, along with invited guests from the school district, which will include myself, another senior team member, the board chair, and the Indigenous Education Department lead. This was a very important process over the last year to develop this term of reference. I think it helped strengthen our already strong relationship with the Saanich Nation, and something that this board can be proud of. As the board will recall, the IEC is not a committee of the board, but is a standalone entity that provides advice and recommendations and even decisions to the board on certain topics, as outlined in the briefing note. So the board does not approve the terms of reference, but I will be forwarding it on the board's behalf and on the nation's behalf to the Ministry of Education later this week. But I bring it for your information this evening, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the superintendent on this item? Thank you. We'll move on then to committee reports. And the first one, item 9, is the report on the Education Directions Committee meeting. And in the absence of Committee Chair Silzer, I'll turn to committee member Trustee Vandal, who chaired that meeting, for the report this evening, please.
Thank you, Chair. Parkland Sailing Academy presented at directions. Carolyn Hassett and Christine Bennett gave a presentation on the Parkland Sailing Academy, highlighting its seasonal schedule, enrolling trends since 2012, and half of which are Parkland International students, and how the program contributes to reporting credits, along with the associated fee. The presentation sparked interest in having Parkland Marine Academy present to Ed Directions later in this school year. I'm very pleased that COPAX has asked that we record Ed Directions for parents all alike to have exposure to the wonderful information we get. We're privileged to get, and I think all the public needs to be privileged to get this information as well. The hairstyling program, Studio 63, Assistant Superintendent Melanie Pass shared a briefing note announcing that Vancouver Island University, VCC, will no longer host the hairstyling program, Studio 63. In its place, a new partnership has been formed with Vancouver Community College. Program will continue as scheduled with classes beginning in January 2026. Sure, I should have announced that, a briefing note announced that the Vancouver Island University will no longer be IU. So the motion is, the committee recommends, and I, Trustee Vandal, move that the board extend its gratitude to Assistant Superintendent Melanie Pass, Principal Kelly DeClerc, and Career Program Coordinator Kelly Hatton for their leadership in securing the new partnership with VCC towards the Studio 63 Hairstylist Program.
Thank you, and seconded by Trustee McMurphy. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Trustee Vandal?
It seems pretty seamless, and we're quite pleased about that.
Thank you. Is there any question, comment, debate, or discussion, trustees, on the motion? I'll put the question. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion's carried. Thank you.
And the second motion is the committee recommends, and I, Trustee Vandal, move that the board acknowledge and thank VIU for their commitment to student success throughout the 15-year partnership and for their support during the transition.
Again, seconded by Trustee McMurphy. Comments as the mover, Trustee Vandal?
We're pretty lucky to have VIU and still have their support in this transition. It's a very win-win situation.
It was a long time at Vancouver Island University. Any other comments, trustees, on this motion? Trustee McMurphy.
I would particularly like to recognize the woman whose name I can't remember.
The minister.
And
Anastasia.
Anastasia.
Anastasia, yes.
If when the board writes, if they could add in a comment about particularly, because she's not coming with the program issue.
We don't know yet.
We don't know. We can still thank her anyway.
We hope.
It's a different
Yes.
union that she has to apply, I believe.
Assistant Superintendent has her fingers crossed, as do we all.
Like all of us, yes.
So yes, Trustee McMurphy, we will ensure that
She's included in the letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on the motion, trustees? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Trustee Mandel?
We have future agenda items, the school plan in November, which will be school plan review, November. Data sharing around strategic plan goals, and that's ongoing. Student voice feedback, which is very interesting and important information, and that's ongoing. And we'll have the benefits of the international student program. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any other questions for Trustee Mandel on the report? Trustee Mandel, thank you for the report, and thank you too for chairing that meeting in the absence of Trustee Silver. It went really well. Thank you. We'll move then to the Finance, Facilities, and Technology Committee with the committee chair, Al.
Thank you, Chair. The meeting began with a presentation from consultant Erica Letchford of Ready Energy Solutions, and Director Rob Lum in regard to the Energy Sustainability Plan. And as we have, I think, become used to, the presentation was very well presented and very well received. Rich information presented in a way that's very understandable as we track toward targeted reductions for 2030 in a way that, admittedly unattainable, those targets, without the infusion of many millions of dollars from some other source. But within the funds that are available to the district, it's clear that our people are doing all they can to move us toward reductions in greenhouse gases in the key areas of buildings, transportation, and paper. So that was a informative and I think really valuable to the board presentation. We look forward to tracking the progress over time, as led in our district by Director Lum and by our consultant with the Ready Energy Solutions. And through you, Chair, anything you want to add, Secretary Treasurer Reid, as this is your team that brought this?
No, I think you summarized the report.
Thank you. We're in very good hands. Items for recommendation, we received briefing notes. Two, one, the first being preliminary enrollment and funding. And I'll put the motion on the floor and hope it gets seconded, and then have a brief comment to make, and then look forward to any discussion that might come from that. The committee recommends, and I trustee Elder move that the board approve the proposed 2025-26 expenditure budget changes.
Thank you. Moved by trustee Elder and seconded by trustee McMurray.
Those changes are as found in summary on page 53 of the 64-page FF&T report. And of note is the fact that through a combination of enrolling changes in enrollment and changes in numbers of students in the inclusive education categories, there are some puts and takes there, but the net effect of that is that there is a funding growth relative to the preliminary budget of just under $470,000. And as is always the case in the fall, we hope that there will be a funding growth relative to budget, because there have always been expenditures above and beyond budget that are required to start the school year. This year, an extra division at North Sandwich Middle School and a significant amount of funding, in fact, totaling up to $300,000 required for inclusive education through growth and designations. So those expenditures have already been made, and it's the board's practice to support that as opposed to wait until these funding changes become clear and then approve expenditures that by then are 2 months too late because the students are there and the needs are there. So we are being asked through this briefing note to support those expenditures against those increased revenues. And I just hope that we all, as we did in committee, see the value and utility in that and support this motion.
Thank you, trustee Elder. Are there any comments other than soft touching on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you.
The committee also received the current iteration of the multi-year financial plan. It's the 2026 to 2028 multi-year financial plan. Again, I'll put the motion on the floor and then speak briefly to it and ask the Secretary Treasurer to add his comments. The committee recommends, and I trustee Elder move that the board approve the 2026 to 2028 multi-year financial plan.
Moved by trustee Elder, seconded by trustee McMurray.
Thank you, Chair. My comments are really in relation to the final page of the Finance, Facilities and Technology report, which is page 64 of 64, where with respect to the entire briefing note which preceded that exhibit, there is a summary that shows the anticipated forecasts for the coming years, inclusive of this year, which is still tentative because the final budget for this year is not in place until February or so. And I note in particular the bottom 3 lines of the spreadsheet or the chart, which show accumulated operating surplus opening and closing with changes in between to show in each of the years past and going forward, the operating surplus opening, the change in that surplus, and then the operating surplus closing. And note that the operating surplus in previous years has increased by year end, despite the fact that the projection was that it would decrease. And that's due to a number of factors that were brought to our attention constantly by the Secretary Treasurer in terms of, and the Director of Finance in terms of changes on an ongoing basis and underspending relative to budget and the kinds of things that produce a better bottom line than was anticipated. With that in mind, as we look to this year, next year, and the year after, it is again expected that there will be a change in accumulated operating surplus, and the board has approved spending against the surplus to balance this year's budget. But by the end of this year, we may find that the situation is a little better and that the closing operating surplus is better than anticipated. We would hope that. It's happened before. We would hope it happens again. It may not. It may be worse than anticipated. We just don't know until the expenditures are all clear by year end. With that in mind, we see that in the coming 3 years or so, the accumulated operating surplus by closing time of the 2027-2028 school year may be close enough to zero as it might as well be zero, $400,000 compared to 7 million or 10 million or big numbers like that that have been historically in place. So that brings about a real caution that is in the multi-year financial plan that speaks to the need to eventually, possibly sooner than later, have to effect some significant budget reductions in order to balance going forward. So this is a cautionary tale and an accurate one. And it does give rise to the plan that we have to start entertaining potential budget reductions based on reports that we receive from the Secretary Treasurer as early as next month, where we start looking at if we have to make reductions. What might those be? What might their implications be? So at this point, this is the projection that we hope does not come true, with accommodation for considering adjustments should this projection actually come true. And I think that's this clear picture and this clear idea of things we need to think about going forward are a credit to the very strong work of our Secretary Treasurer and our Director of Finance. So I thank you for that. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Trustee Elder. Other comments, questions, discussion, trustees? Right, all in favor of the motion? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Secretary Treasurer, any comments on that before we move away from this report? No. Where we should be? Thank you very much. That ends my report.
Thank you, Trustee.
Concludes my report. That's the word.
Thank you. Moving then to the report from the Policy Development Committee with Committee Chair Manuel.
Chair. So in our ongoing review of policies at committee, we focused on policy 12, trustee elections, and policy 13, trustee code of conduct. And we have 2 items of recommendation with those policies. So I'll start with policy 12, trustee elections. Secretary Treasurer, do I read out the motion first? Does it have to be approved before we move on, or do I just read out the whole thing? Again?
Yeah, so the first, the motion is there to provide the board an opportunity as a board to confirm that they're considering these changes.
Okay,
And then once that happens, as chair of the policy committee, then you can provide the notice of motion.
okay, all right.
That's from policy 6, I think, Trustee.
Okay, so policy 12, trustee elections, the motion reads that the board confirm its consideration of the proposed amendments to policy 12, trustee elections.
Seconded by Trustee McMurphy. Would you speak to that?
with trustee elections, we had some language changes. And 13. I think there was some minor, just some minor language changes in it that are reflected in the.
Thank you. Any other comments on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
So notice of motion, I, trustee Vanwell, provide notice at the January 14, 2026 public meeting of the Board of Education. I will move the following motion, that revisions to policy 12, trustee elections, be approved.
Thank you.
And then policy 13, trustee code of conduct, that the board confirm its consideration of the proposed amendments to policy 13, trustee code of conduct, with the appendix, trustee code of conduct sanctions.
Seconded by trustee McMurphy. Again, trustee Manuel, comments?
So with policy 13, we focused at the end of the policy, we removed the number 13 and number 14, and just tweaked, I guess, number 11 in the policy, adding that represent the board in all board-related matters, including board and committee meetings with proper decorum and respect for others. Yes. So those are the 3 changes that we made on that policy.
Any other comment, trustees? All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried.
So there it is. Notice of motion, I, trustee Van, will provide notice at the January 14th, 2026 public meeting of the Board of Education. I will move that the following motion, that revisions to policy 13, trustee code of conduct, appendix, trustee code of conduct sanctions be approved.
Okay. Does that include your report?
No, we have an item for information, and this relates to the Indigenous Education Council. We had a talk about the Indigenous Educational Council, and that we spoke about it being a standing agenda item at the board meeting, and we discussed where it was going to be placed, and we decided that it was going to be good, as reflected in this meeting, it was placed before committee reports. And that as well, So staff will be providing, I'm assuming next board meeting, whether the current legislation, not that. They will also provide which senior staff member will be providing the reports to us moving forward. Yes. Right.
And I think we understand from this evening, trustee Manuel, and correct me if I'm wrong, that report will come through the superintendent.
Correct. Okay, so I guess it will. So yes.
So we may have an answer to one of those questions.
We would, yes, absolutely. And that concludes my report.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for that, trustee Manuel. Any questions for trustee Manuel on the policy report? Trustee McMurphy, did you? Or you were just flipping pages? Okay, thank you. Right, we'll move then to reports from trustee representatives, and the first was the October 6th COPAX meeting, and trustee Vandal, you were there for us, as I recall.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The COPAX meeting was October the 6th, and I reported on VISTA, Vancouver Island School Board Trustee Association, and I'm sure that in the next VISTA report, you'll be hearing more about it, so I'll keep it brief. One of the highlights for myself was hearing about anti-ableism and disability justice. I think we'll be hearing more about this in the future. I was going to explain it further, but I'm sure trustee Manuel. No? Okay, then I will go. Okay, thank you. We have 2 outstanding, I'll go back, keynote speakers, I thought, and they were Natalie Rayroff Prague, and I'm sure I'm not saying that, pronouncing it correctly. She's a learning support teacher at Curry High Secondary. She spoke on cultivating inclusive pathways through anti-ableism and disability justice. And I was quite pleased that Colpax put this information on their Facebook page as well. And the second one that stood out to me was Stephen Joyce from Timberland Secondary shared how outdoor education connects students with nature, builds resilience, and opens new doors to learning. And this brought up some questions at Colpax about outdoor education. Then I talked about, you mentioned that on September 22nd, it was a Pro-E Day held at Claremont and focused on decolonizing education. And there were 670 educators who attended and several trustees. And the keynote speaker was Dr. Brad Baker, Superintendent of Indigenous Education, Ministry of Education and Childcare in BC. Lastly, I mentioned because the first Colpax meeting was before this was passed or presented. The FESL document, Framework for Enhancing Student Learning, was available for SB 1623 and available to view online.
Thank you. Any questions for Trustee Vandal on the Colpax meeting? Fine, thank you. We'll move to you then, Trustee Manuel, for Vista.
Thank you. All right, so Trustee Vandal let you know what a couple of the speakers that we had, and there was additionally, we also had a panel of Indigenous leaders in the Campbell River community, and their director of inclusive education, I think that was her title. But she asked questions of the three panelists, and they provided their journeys that they had, and they talked about, and it was very interesting how very different their journeys were. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that very much. And then the next day we had our Vista business meeting, and I'll kind of run through this really briefly. We had our financial report. The meetings were approved from March 8th, and then the AGM minutes will be approved in April 2026. We had various committee reports, including the one from BCPC, Indigenous Education and Professional Learning Committee. They provided updates on their activities and upcoming events that will be happening, mainly our academy that will be happening at the end of November. The Legislative Committee highlighted changes in the bylaws affecting provincial council, raising concerns about its effectiveness. The Inclusion and the Accessibility Working Group emphasized the importance of anti-ableism and disability justice, and that went along with Miss Ray Wolf-Polk, is how you say her last name. Yeah. And then for new business, there were some proposed amendments to the Vista branch constitution, including membership criteria and the role of the immediate vice president. And one of the things that we will be adding is the SD 93, the Francophone, will be added to our constitution as a member of Vista. There was a motion to, people were invited to talk if they had a motion that they will be submitting to the AGM. There was an opportunity to introduce these motions to all the school districts within Vista. And one of them was to advocate for dedicated funding for school district-owned housing and support staff recruitment in high-cost areas. I believe that is coming from Port Alberni. Pacific Rim. And then our new president, Kat, She has met with the BC Ferries. I guess there's some changes that have been happening, and she's been in discussions with them to make sure that school districts are involved in any committees and talk in any changes like that might take place within BC Ferries. So she's sort of helping coordinate with that. She just discussed that. And then there was a good discussion on the motion building working group. And at our next meeting, there will be draft terms of reference to do that. So basically, the committee is, or the working group is there to help support any of the school district within Vista, with the idea that if the Vista is behind the motion, that it'll be a stronger motion on the floor. Yeah. That's it for my report.
That's it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Most of us were at Vista, but if there are any questions for trustee Van on the report, this is the time.
Did you have a good time? Had a great time.
And the salmon was really good.
Yes.
A wonderful salmon dinner, salmon and chicken. Yeah.
Thank you, trustee Van Wel. It was a good conference. And then we'll move to correspondence. There's one item, the letter from the Minister of Infrastructure. Is there any discussion with respect to that? Thank you. Then item 15 is the second question period of the meeting. Again, when the guests, partner representatives, or public are offered an opportunity to ask a question of the board, principally with respect perhaps to the business that's conducted tonight at this point. So again, if there are any questions, please signify in some fashion so that I might recognize you. Thank you. Seeing none, that concludes the agenda for the evening. Is there any objection to adjourning, trustees?
Yeah.
I'll take that as an endorsement of the suggestion. We are adjourned. Thank you for coming and for your participation.